Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. You know where you are, the 9 at 9 with me, Tigo. And if you're sitting right there, you know what's about to happen. I'm going to bring yet another amazing expert on today. But we're going to go in an entirely different direction. Today, we're going to talk about American grit. Now, I know in your mind you got all things in place and you're going, oh, I know what that's all about. I can guarantee you don't. You don't want to miss it. So sit right there. We'll be right back. You heard me right. We're going in a different direction today. You know, we always talk to experts. We always talk to authors. A lot of the experts are authors, and today is no different. But we're going to talk with my buddy John Suzuki about American grit and exactly what happened and a little bit of our history that you may not know about. Hey, John, are you out there?
Hey, Tigo. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on, man. You know, I see it over your head right there in the corner. American grit. Is that
Yeah.
a poster? Is it what is it?
Yeah, it's a poster. It's a poster. And it's funny because when you're talking about American grit, when people think of American grit, they don't think of a bunch of Japanese people. They think about something else, right? And
Exactly.
so happy to be here for sure.
Happy to have you here. And you know, just like you said, we don't really talk about what happened in history around, you know, the camps and Japanese people and what people don't even believe today that that even happened. So
Right.
can you give me just a brief overview? And I know we could probably talk about this for hours, and I will because I love hearing the stories. But can you just give me a brief overview of exactly what happened and what made you decide to write this amazing book?
Absolutely. It is an incredible true story about I talk about my book is about one particular person who's right there over my shoulder. His name is Shiro Kashino, but it's about his experience and the experience of 122,000 people who were thrown into concentration camps here in America during World War II simply because of their
Wow.
race. And 50,000 of them include 50,000 children and babies that got caught up in it. Terrible experience, but an incredible story. Anyway, it talks about his experience from the camps, volunteering out of the camps to fight and perhaps die for the United States Army, who put them and their families in the camp to begin with. And
Wow.
then he came out of the war as one of the most decorated war heroes of World War II. And the reason why I wrote the book was, I originally wrote it as a cautionary tale that this is something
Hmm.
that happened to make everybody aware, and it could happen again. But I've actually made it into a cautionary wake up call, because the more I see as I think about this, the more fearful I am that they will happen again in this country if we're not careful.
Really? You think that could happen again
There's no question in my
in
mind.
our time?
Yes. Yes. It
Why?
almost did. It almost did. When you think back on 9/11, somebody
Yeah.
came up with the misguided idea that all Muslims must be terrorists and that we needed to round them up and put them away. And
Right.
lots of people rose up, including the Japanese American community, that said, no, 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 no,
Not
that
going
doesn't
down that
happen.
road again.
Yeah, and so the
Wow.
makings of it happening are very similar to pre-World War II, and that's what makes me a little bit fearful.
So when this happened, one, where were the camps, you know? And on top of that, when they volunteered, because he wasn't the only one who volunteered to fight for
Right,
America while his family
right.
was still in the camps. When they volunteered, did the family get more privileges? I mean, why would they do that when they're literally their family's in prison?
Yeah, so these camps, there are 10 major camps sprinkled across the country. And he was at one in the deserts of Minnesota of Idaho called Minidoka. Now,
Hmm.
and these camps were in what I call the Badlands of America, in the deserts and swamps of America, where nobody wanted to live, as far away from humanity as they can make them. And the reason why Shiro and all these men, and there were almost 3,000 of them who volunteered
Wow.
across the different camps, was to prove their loyalty, because they thought that they didn't know how long they were going to be in these camps. Nobody knew.
Hmm.
They thought they could be in these camps forever. And
Hmm.
so they decided that the best way to get their families out of there was to prove that they deserved to be loyal Americans just as much as anybody else. And they went out and did it.
Now, my question that comes to mind right now is the children, that
Yes,
were also in these camps. Have you done any research on how they survived after it? Being a child, that when these traumas happen, they stick with you for a lifetime.
they do.
How did
They
they
do.
survive after the camp was over?
That's a really great question, because when they were in camp, a lot of them were children, and so
Hmm.
they didn't feel the effects of having lost their farms, their parents. I mean, obviously did, but after the war, they closed the camps. Everybody was given $25 on a one-way ticket to restart their lives someplace after having lost everything. But
Hmm.
the young people of the time, some of them are still alive today, and they still live with PTSD. But
Wow.
part of the story of American Grit is not only about the men who went out and fought in the war, but about everybody and how they recovered and how they stuck to their American dreams of a better life for their family, and how they continued to fight racism and prejudice for decades after the war. Because when they came back, they weren't. It was hard to find housing. It was hard to find jobs. They were still viewed as the enemy, and uh,
Mm.
and so yeah, it is. It's been kind of, for those people. It's been a lifelong story and journey for them.
I've had the opportunity to speak with a couple of people, well, more than a couple, that are from Vietnam, Vietnamese, and
Hmm.
everything that went on with Vietnam War and how their families got separated, especially if there were American soldiers as their dads, they got kind of shunned
Yeah.
upon there. So how did Japan react to the Japanese families that were here in America, after everything, the war's over? Were they like, don't come back here? Or was it, you're still part of the family, you can come home if you want to?
Yeah, no, they were. It was the latter. It was the latter. They
Yeah.
weren't shunned. In fact,
Good.
during the war, during World War II, my dad fought the Japanese. He's Japanese American, and he fought the Japanese.
Wow.
And the Japanese at the time, the Japanese government considered everybody who was of Japanese nationality as a citizen. So if he was
Mm.
captured, he would have been shot as a traitor to
Wow.
the emperor. And so, but after the war was over, my dad actually served in the United States Army during the rebuilding of Japan. This whole chapter is something that's really fascinating to them too, of what happened in the camps, and what people did, how they recovered, and the heroism behind it.
We just got through COVID, so they say, although three of my friends have had COVID in the last month or so I don't know if we'll
Wow.
ever get through it. But we just got through COVID, and I'm wondering what one thing stuck with you. I'm sure there were several on survival yourself for you and your family. What stuck with you that you learned from your research?
With regard to COVID, uh, stop blaming people. Right? If it came from China, maybe, perhaps, but
Perhaps,
don't
right?
blame every Asian you come across. Right?
Thank you.
Don't come across. I mean, that's one of the problems that we have in this country right now, is that we're bucketizing people.
Mm.
In any country in Asia, there's nobody who identifies themselves as an Asian. There's
Yeah,
no Japanese person, Korean person, or Asian person that identifies themselves as an Asian.
you're right.
In Europe, there's no white people that identify themselves as white people, right? And yet
Right.
we bucketize everybody, and we got the whites and blacks and the Christians and the Muslims, and it's that bucketizing of people, along with widespread fear, that we have to be careful of, because that's what got us into trouble. And today we're dealing with a whole bunch of other things, like victimhood and political discourse and ideological differences. It's crazy. And so when you think about what all that can lead to, there's no question in my mind that we could be at risk in the future.
I love this is our second or third time of having a conversation together. I'm so glad we could do this interview. And we can talk for hours. I
We
know you
can't.
have a new show coming up. What's your new show? When is it? When is it starting? What's it about?
I'm starting in November. It's called Finding Better. And it's all about people sharing their experiences, not to have a perfect life or be really cool, but just find better relationships, better financing, better jobs, better, just finding better. And it's going to be all based on experiences of people who have been there and done that, and to just share their experiences to help people live happier and better lives. It's going to be a
Well,
lot of
I
fun.
I hope you'll come back often and just share your story and share your journey with your new show. And you're always welcome to come on our show. You're a part of the family now. You are amazing.
Wonderful, Tigo. You are too. Thank you.
Thanks for hanging out, John. All right, everybody, you know what to do. You want to get in touch with John, you want to get his book, you want to find out more about his show, go to tigodirect.com, type in John, type in American Grit. He'll come up, send him a message, say, hey, I heard you, I saw you on Expert Talk, and I want to know more about your book and your show. And John will get right back to you. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know I did. And I want you to come back next time. As always, I'm Tigo. I'll talk to you next time.